Why, thank you for joining us again with Talking with Tad. I'm glad to have you back and hope that you might have shared it with bringing in some new people to join us. This is the first part of September. We just finished the RNC convention. Energy is high. The excitement is out there. And now we're getting into that last part, the hard run for elections. And I thought that what might be very interesting to all of you is that you would like to meet some of our candidates that are on the ballot this time. And I figured we might start off with someone that I know personally, have known him for years, absolutely think he is one of the best because you know why? He always shows up. He's a grassroots candidate, but he has been in the judicial system for a while. He's an attorney, but he's a judge. And so I want you to hear firsthand from our friend who you could get to know, and you might know anyway, is Judge Kevin Yeary. And Judge, welcome to our event for Talking with Tad. And we're so glad you're our very first candidate to participate in our weekly show.
Thank you, Tony Ann. Thanks so much. It's really an honor for me to be here. And I'm always also a big admirer of yours and all the work that you do. And I think this forum that you created is just fantastic. I mentioned to you before we got started that I have seen a few of your interviews in the past, and I think you do a wonderful job. So thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. That's so kind, and I do appreciate those words. Now, I want the people to get to know you. I want them to know, how did you decide to become an attorney? What drove you, inspired you to run for office? And so give them that history so they personally know who you are.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Laredo, Texas, on the border to Mexico. My parents were both born and raised down there. My grandparents were involved in the community. My grandfather was the president of the school board down there. So we're really connected to that South Texas community in a big way. I went to law school and undergrad in law school over at St. Mary's University in San Antonio.
Right.
It was close enough to home that I could make trips home to visit the parents if I needed to, and I didn't feel too far away. But I didn't really plan from the beginning to become a lawyer. I certainly didn't plan to practice criminal or appellate law or even to become a judge one day. The way I explain it to people is I think that divine providence has had a lot to do with my life. I always have felt like God has been watching over me and directing me into the path that he would like to see me go rather than the way that I would like to go. I know that if I had my druthers as a younger man, I would have been a rich civil lawyer by now. Instead, I spent a career as an assistant district attorney. I had the great fortune of being able to clerk for a judge on the Court of Criminal Appeals my first year out of law school. And that's really the thing that changed the path of my career, because I was all set to become a civil lawyer, and civil litigation was my path. I had a plan to make a bunch of money, and then that judge, his name was Bill White, he called and extended an offer to me to serve as his law clerk for a year. So I did that. After that year, I then went back into that civil firm because I had promised those lawyers I would work for them. And I did that for about 3 years. But I also got involved with criminal cases because of that year I spent at the High Criminal Court in Texas. And that just blossomed in me. I knew that when I was doing that work that I always felt good about what I was doing, and I felt like it was something I was good at. So I made the decision then to pursue a career as an assistant DA, and I was hired by the Dallas DA's office. Wow. I worked in their appellate division, which is, essentially practicing in front of the appellate courts in Texas and also in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals. I moved from there to the Harris County DA's office because I was chasing a really cute girl I wanted to marry me. I caught her in Houston, and she's a pediatrician. My wife is Susie. She's a pediatrician. She was in training, so I had to go there to be with her. I worked for the Harris County DA's office in their appellate division. Again, practicing in the appellate courts. When my wife finished her training, we moved to San Antonio to raise our kids around family, and I worked for the Bexar County DA's office. I ended up doing that I did DA work for about 19 years, and then there were 3 open seats on the Court of Criminal Appeals. And, I really felt a sense of obligation almost to step up and say to the people of Texas, I'm here, and if you want to choose me to work on that court, then I'm available and I will be willing to do the job. And so with the help of a lot of very smart people who were experienced in politics, I was fortunate to be successful. And now I find myself one of the 9 judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals.
Well, and that is awesome. First of all, there's no question that you are a family man. I know that, and that you connect with your family, and that is such a wonderful asset that you have. And then you've covered the whole state. So what a perfect position to be in, because you know the system across this whole state. And that's very impressive. But, you talk a little bit about the court. Tell us a little bit. Now we get to hear about you and grab that personal touch. Tell us about that court and how it works, because I'm not sure everybody understands the Supreme Court, Criminal Court of Appeals. So if you would do that, we'd appreciate that.
Yes, the Court of Criminal Appeals is the Supreme Court of our state for criminal cases, and it has been that way since 1891. So about nearly coming close to 130 years. I was one of the things that I made sure we did in 2016 was to celebrate at the court the 125th anniversary of that court. We're one of only 2 states in the nation that have 2 Supreme Courts. The other state is Oklahoma, and they followed our lead. We were the trailblazers way back in 1891 by creating a court like the Court of Criminal Appeals, which exclusively decides criminal matters and not any other types of matters. And so since that time, since 1891, our court has served as the court of last resort for all criminal cases. The Supreme Court of Texas, much to the surprise of many people, hasn't heard criminal cases for 130 plus years. They decide cases that are involving contracts and personal injury and family law, things that are considered civil matters. Our court is the court that decides the criminal matters. In fact, I encourage all your watchers and listeners to come over to the Supreme Court building one day and to look at the courtrooms. There are 2 courtrooms in our Supreme Court building, one on the left for the Supreme Court and one on the right for the Court of Criminal Appeals. And it's really something to see.
I've been there. It is something to see. Can you go and sit in and listen in also if you're in session? Yes, you can.
If we hear arguments in the courtroom, then the public is always invited. I remember that some years ago, we had a case involving the indictment of Governor Perry. I don't know if you remember that.
Wow.
But that case made its way to our court. And one of the things that we were concerned about was because there was so much interest in watching that argument, we had to call our friends over at the Supreme Court of Texas and say, hey, can we borrow your courtroom? And we set up a big screen TV on the other side so that if there was overflow, those people could go sit in their courtroom and still see what was happening in ours.
Wow, that's a good bit of trivia. I like that. And well, so now how would they find out when you're in session and hearing cases? Do you have a website that you go to?
Yes, we posted on the Court of Criminal Appeals website. All the Texas courts of appeals have a unified website. And on that website, you can navigate to any court of appeals, including the Supreme Court of Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals, or any one of the 14 intermediate appellate courts around the state.
Well, they could just Google that and then they get right to your site and then be able to see. So that's great that you've welcomed the people to come in and listen is right. What you to do. Thank you. I kind of knew that, but I didn't realize. So, I have 2 quick questions for you. Well, one quick question, and then we're going to go into the fun fact. Real quick, what of the cases that you have dealt with, do you have anyone that in particular that stands out or that you want to share or anything?
Sure. Well, I'll just mention first, I have, since I arrived on the court, I have made a conscious effort at developing and consistently employing what I call my own unique judicial philosophy, which begins with the principle that there are separated powers in our country and in our state. And so it's very important for us as judges to remain in our lane and not try to make policy and not try to write law, but simply decide cases as they come before the court. So there's a number of cases that I could speak to, but the Perry case was quite an interesting case to be involved in because it was such a, there was such a giant spotlight of the whole state and even the country on what was going on in our court because of that. But, every case is important to me. We very recently, this last term, decided a case involving the constitutionality of our Open Meetings Act. And I was a dissenter in that case because I did not think that the Open Meetings Act was unconstitutional, but the majority of the judges on my court believed that it was. And so, anytime I get involved in a case like that where I feel very strongly that the court might be making a decision that I can't get in line with, those are cases that I feel strongly about. I'm a passionate person by nature, but I really do feel like I'm accomplishing something important when I provide that voice from the outside saying, look, I think maybe we need to reconsider the way we're looking at something.
Well, I'll tell you, Judge, we are very blessed to have you on that court. I'm hoping that everybody will share this, be able to get to know you, that personal touch, and get more people to support you, because this is the first year we are not having straight voting ticket. You have to go all the way down. And I think, as we spoke earlier, you're like number 11 or 12 down the list, and there'll be many more. So we need to encourage people to go down and vote for all the Republicans, all the people that are great for these positions. And you've done such a good job for us. Now,
thanks for mentioning that, Tony Ann.
Thank you. And before I let you go, as we always do on Talking with Tad, you have to share a fun fact. So do you have a fun fact for us today?
Yes. Unless you've known me my whole life, you might not know this about me, but my first job that I ever took, where I actually got a paycheck and paid taxes, it happened when I was 16 years old. I worked at a radio station in Laredo, Texas called KOYE. And while it didn't first start out as a live DJ format, it eventually became a live DJ format. And I was there for that. And so I was a live DJ and had the call name The Kid Rocker.
I love it. That's
on KOYE in Laredo, Texas. And so that's a fun fact about me you might not know unless I, shared it with you here.
I did not know that, and you have a great voice for the radio, so I would agree with that. Now let me remember, Kid Rock, is that what they called you?
Kid Rocker, yeah.
Rocker. Oh,
I didn't dream it up. I didn't dream it up myself. The friend of mine who was on the radio before me, before my shift started, he introduced me and said, "Coming up next, we'll have the Kid Rocker," and that just started the whole thing.
No, well, that is definitely a fun fact, and thank you. But we will continue calling you Judge, even though we'll have that at the back of our heads from now on. Thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for being with us today and sharing everything you did. Very informative. Again, everybody, please remember to vote for Judge Kevin Yeary. We really do need him back on the seat to be that voice for us and be balanced and not create law, but follow the law. And so we look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tony, and God bless you.
God bless you.